program and what we're doing within the Summer Scholar program. So welcome here. And we'll be spending the next 30 minutes diving into what the program is, what some of the research opportunities are, and how you could position your profile for the Summer Scholar program. So I'd like to invite both of my colleagues to introduce themselves. Mana, would you like to go first?
Sure, thanks, Rachel. So I am currently a second-year PhD at the Auton Lab, advised by Professor Artur Dabrowski. And I also happen to be a two-time riss scholar, first time in 2018 and the second time in 2019. And I'll let Salva introduce himself, but yeah, I mean, if the TLDR is that the riss was very transformative in my journey, and it's one of the reasons why I'm here as a second-year PhD student. Okay.
Hi everyone, I'll go next. I'm Salva. I totally agree with Mono on that end that the riss program was a transforming and kind of life-changing experience in a good way. I'm studying right now in Germany at TU Darmstadt. I was a riss scholar in 2020. It was online in that year. Right now I'm interning at Mellon in Montreal. And yeah, I'm happy to talk a little bit more about my riss project later or anything else. Oh, and I worked at the Auton Lab too, just like Monolito, by coincidence.
So one of the amazing things when I look at the student experiences across is that the Auton Lab has done just a wonderful job of including students in a range of projects, and it is exceptional. And I love the Auton Lab, but there are so many labs within the Robotics Institute that are doing really, really interesting work. So we're going to do a deep dive today with the Auton Lab and some of those projects and thinking about the journey. What I'm going to do to kick us off is to share a little bit about the Summer Scholar program, and we're going to take a look together at the program and how it's structured and the different opportunities that you might have. So when we're thinking about the Summer Scholar program, what is it? It's an undergraduate research program that is at Carnegie Mellon University. And we are a university that's top ranked in the world for many fields. Within the Robotics Institute, there's really so much that is truly unique about this community. It's one of the first, it's one of the largest, and there are literally hundreds of active projects. So the Summer Scholars program is about a deep immersion so that you get to explore research from and about robotics from so many different sides. You're going to hear from Mananito and Salva about their research, and it may not be what you first envision when you think about robotics. And that shows the breadth of the research that is happening at the Institute. The Summer Scholar program, if we want to think about it, it's really three different areas. It's guided research, it's professional development, and it's the community. I cannot overemphasize how important that community is, how important it is to make those connections. And I think about Manonito and Salva and their journeys, and in each one of their journeys, to riss, during riss, and afterwards, that riss community has been an essential part of it. They've been advocating for them. They've been opening doors. They've been trying to encourage them to explore research and explore other possibilities. So we're going to dive into some specifics in a few minutes, but I'd like to really invite Mananito and Salva to dive in and to share a little bit about their research, because we want to take a look at what do you actually get to do? What do you actually get to do within the riss program? And I think that's one of the questions that is coming across. Can I come if I'm an international student? Well, we know that that's the case. So every single day I'm getting that question. I'm an international student. Can I apply to riss? Yes, you absolutely can. And there's funding and there's scholarship opportunities and there's other things as well. Now, In addition to that, what are the range of possibilities and how do you find those? So we ask the students, do not contact the faculty members in advance. We ask that they dive into the risk research and really look for potential fit. So I'm going to invite Mano to share his research with us and talk a little bit about his experience within the Summer Scholar program. Mano?
Thanks, Rachel. So, I think Salva will also tell you a little bit about what the Auton Lab is doing, but maybe I can give a quick 1 minute brief overview of the Auton Lab, which is one of the labs which takes a few risk scholars every single year. So at the Auton Lab, we work on practical machine learning solutions and we solve problems across a variety of fields, primarily in healthcare. And 2 years back when I was in riss, I was also an intern at the Auton Lab. So at that point in time, I worked in education, and there are people working in detecting the spread of infectious diseases, which is and viruses, which is something which is very relevant due to the pandemic and things of that sort. So I'll give you all a short and brief overview of what I work in currently, which is like one of the possible research directions at the Auton Lab, and then maybe Salva can come in and talk about his research. Okay, so so this work was conducted whilst I was in Auton Lab and with Benedict Boking and Professor Artur Dabrowski. And so this is regarding affordable monitoring of electrocardiogram data. And the motivation behind it is that analyzing electrocardiograms helps in diagnosing heart disease, but at the same time is very cumbersome and error prone. And the field of medical machine learning has looked at machine learning oriented techniques to detect arrhythmia quicker and better, and they've been able to do it better than cardiologists. Like that's what some recent studies show. But what all of these methods need are large annotated data sets from a diverse cohort of patients. But what we have seen in practice is that raw clinical data is abundant, but its characterization and labeling it is expensive, it's time consuming, and sometimes even prone to errors. And there have been studies which have shown that these big data sets like MNIST, which are fairly simple problems, even those have labeling errors. So that's a real problem. So the main motivation behind this work was annotating large data sets point by point takes time. For instance, the data set that we ended up using here, the MIT VIH arrhythmia database, took almost 2 years to annotate. It's expensive and it's sometimes unnecessary. In this work, what we had tried to do was instead of going in the supervised machine learning sense in which we need each and every single data point to be labeled by hand by experts, we ended up using something called weak supervision, which was recently proposed a couple of years ago, where one can leverage multiple sources of weak supervision as informed by doctors and medical experts to train an arrhythmia detector without access to any ground truth labels. And the problem that we are trying to solve here was distinguishing between premature ventricular contractions and other kinds of arrhythmias or abnormal heartbeats. And it's a simple binary classification problem. So this is the entire workflow in a nutshell, and I won't go much in depth, but we start with the doctor and the doctors give us heuristics on what they feel are good rules to detect premature ventricular contractions or distinguish between PVCs and other kinds of heartbeats. And these heuristics do not have to be perfect. They can make mistakes, they can conflict with each other's, and this method, the weak supervision actually learns from the conflicts and dependencies and overlaps of these heuristics that the doctors give. But oops. So the next step is actually converting these heuristics into something called labeling functions, which are nothing but programmatic expressions of domain knowledge. And for instance, we see a small little Python function up there, which says if the R wave appears earlier than usual, then it's more likely to be a premature ventricular contraction. Otherwise, it's another beat. And after having done that, what we do is we train a graphical model, which in this case is a factor graph, and all it tries to do is to intelligently weigh the votes of these labeling functions. So each of these particular labeling functions might say that, you know what, I don't have any idea, so it might abstain, but these labeling functions might also vote for a particular class. For instance, the first labeling function may say, yes, I believe it's a other bead. The second one may say, no, I think it's a PVC. So what the generative model or the probabilistic graphical model does is that it is an intelligent way to aggregate the votes and evidence from these labeling functions in order to probabilistically label the data. And once we have these probabilistic labels, what we can do is end up training a machine learning classifier in the classical supervised machine learning sense with a slightly different loss function. So yeah, that is the entire workflow that we have been working on. We also have a couple of other projects. Like in this case, this was driven by healthcare. We have other projects in with EEG data, with image data, and with natural language data. And I think the major takeaway from this work and this research thrust is that we can not only involve domain experts in the process, but we also now have shift the burden of labeling each and every data point, which might take a lot of time because the advent of modern machine learning methods like deep learning requires lots of labeled data. And we move the burden of labeling each of these data points to now coming up with heuristics, and which for domain experts is far more intuitive, and it also takes a lot less time. So we have doctors coming up and with domain knowledge rather than having to label millions of data points. But yeah, that is a brief overview of my work, and I think Salva can go next.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess if you're considering to apply to riss, it's good to know that there's so much different research going on at the Robotics Institute on machine learning, weak supervision, as Mono and I have been working on. But of course on autonomous vehicles, biorobotics, and a lot more. So in my concrete case, I started as a robotics, as a riss scholar too, and worked at the Autumn Lab, also on weak supervision that Mono introduced to you just now. First, we explored on what happens if the labeling functions that Mono introduced to you are dependent of each other, and what happens if we misspecify those dependencies. That was the first project, which we presented at the riss journal and at two machine learning workshops and as oral presentations. And then we kind of switched over to the more core algorithm of how to solve how to learn from those labeling functions. That's the work that we call end-to-end weak supervision, which started after riss ended. So that's kind of the continued collaboration with the Autumn Lab, and that work is now will be presented at the main NeurIPS conference, which is the largest machine learning or AI conference in the world, and it's very a top big conference. And then additionally to those two projects of the Autumn Lab, I also worked with 4 other riss scholars of the same cohort of 2020 on a project that we worked on as a team on AI for climate forecasting, for weather forecasting, seasonal forecasting. And that work we started also after riss. We had met at the riss program, of course, and we ended up presenting that work at another workshop at NeurIPS on tackling climate change with machine learning. And we got a Microsoft AI for Earth grant, and overall it was another pretty awesome outcome or experience that happened thanks to the riss program. So these are the circled in persons are other riss scholars. Emma, Ernest, and Willa were working at the Autumn Lab too on applications of machine learning for healthcare. Arthur worked on drones at the Air Lab. And then we found another set of mentors to work on this concrete project. And yeah, I won't go into the details of the end-to-end work supervision project, but it's, I said, it's a core algorithm for learning from multiple sources of weak supervision, and that can replace the algorithm presented initially in the citation number 1. Yeah, I think that I should go into the details of the work right now, but if you have any questions, you're welcome to send me an email or so.
Thanks, Alva. I think thank you for summarizing what you took out of the riss program, and maybe I'm not sure, but Riss, you can come in here. But one question that you might be able to answer to potential riss aspirants is, how did you prepare for the program, and how was the application process like, and also maybe drawing parallels between the application process of riss and graduate programs, master's and PhD programs, and how going through this program not only helps you in getting into riss, but also preparing yourself for the potential master's and PhD programs that you might apply to very soon.
I think that there are many different paths and the ways that students have entered into the Summer Scholar program. And one of the things that we see is that so often at the undergraduate level, there is fewer research opportunities, and it's really, really important to kind of explore them. I think that both for Manolito and Salva, your connections to riss, the initial were maybe atypical. The way to dive in and think about exploring the riss opportunity is really to go to the website, to look at the previous research projects and to make those connections there. What do you have to contribute to that learning process? What do you have to contribute to the projects? What we've seen is our most successful students have been able to make those jumps. And what we also do is to look at a number of students with fewer research opportunities or fewer research experience, and sometimes we'll integrate those students into the overall cohort as well. So we have a number of students that when we look at the profiles, and this is very intentional, we have students that we're like, wow, you're ready for the master's program right now. And then we have students that have maybe just finished their freshman year or sophomore year or something in their home university. They don't have that depth of research experience. And you see the differences in the sophistication in the statement of purpose, right? You really, really do see that. But that means that we're trying to create opportunities for really a range of students. And that should really come across when you're thinking about the Summer Scholar Program and the possibilities there. A couple things that I think about is the research. If you write your statement of purpose, you want to connect that to a participating lab. So that's the number one thing. About maybe 20% of the applicants will write something and they don't connect it to any lab at all. If you want to be more successful, connect it to the research project, connect it to things that are going on. If you write a statement of purpose and say, I really want to do AI, okay, go a little bit deeper with that, right? Explore some of the projects. And this happens a lot, right? The other thing that happens is we hear a lot about Star Wars. We hear a lot about Star Wars and things like that. And I think that maybe Manonito, Salva, myself, we're all thinking of our statement of purposes and we're saying, oh no, I did that and I did this and I did that. And those things happen. But the most successful formula to present your profile in a really powerful way will be to look at the prior research projects, look at the posters, the videos first. Next, start looking at the journal and diving in from there. And then look at the profiles of the lab. When you look at the range of research that the faculty members are doing, the researchers are doing, it can be overwhelming. Your entry point is really understanding through the lens of the scholar research. There are some projects that may have ended. There are new projects that are opening up. The best way to really understand what may be possible for you is to look at those posters and such, right? And to go from there. So if you had, Manonito and Salva, if you had one last point of advice to provide for an applicant that's sitting there saying, we talked about if you're an international student, yes, you can apply and you can be part of it. So that one's cleared. Is there a tuition for riss? Nope, there's not a tuition. Is there, will riss be in person for 2022? Yes, we will be in person. Thank goodness, we're gonna be in person. That's gonna be amazing. And you're gonna get to explore Pittsburgh. So those things are sort of put aside. But if someone's sitting there and they're saying, I wonder if I should try, what would you each say to them? What would you each say to them?
My short answer to that is yes, because there's no harm in trying. And I think there's a lot of upsides and potentially no downside. Maybe at this point in time, you're not sure if you want to go into academia or if you want to do a postgraduate graduate program. But that's the thing about riss, right? Once you and you might not know if you like research enough. But these 10 weeks working with like-minded individuals who have very similar backgrounds and working with people who are amongst the best in robotics, you get to know a few things. One, that if you really love research, and if you do, then you know that you can create a lot of important connections which can help you in going ahead and following your aspirations in research. But at the same time, there might also be people who get to know that they might not like research enough, and it's a lot better to get to know that early so that you can focus your time and energy later on other things. So all in all, there's only upsides and there's no downside to it.
Salva, what are your thoughts? What would you suggest?
Yeah, I would recommend everyone who's even slightly interested or in research or a research career in industry or academia to apply and look at the previous work that has been done in the prior years and find projects that sound interesting to you. I think there's hardly a better opportunity to get started with research in a very yeah, it's perfect as a starter for your research career and for your professional development.
Yeah. And I really want to stress, when I look at, and scholars have done this in the past, and it's been a really interesting process where they've actually sat together and they've looked at the statement of purposes of each. And then they say, well, why did I get in? Why did I get in? And such. There is a diversity of thought. There's a diversity of backgrounds. There's a diversity of approaches. And the same thing about the projects as well. So one of the, I would encourage each student to look at the work that you've done within your home university. Really showcase that, share that with us. Share your motivation for entering into research. And this is really about entering into research. At this stage in your academic career, few people have really done deep research. And I have a friend who's just joined me. So few people have actually done research. That's okay. Talk about your project. Talk about some of the things that you love to do. Talk about your preparation, your coding skills. You should try. You should absolutely try. And don't be worried. We get this question as well. Do I need to have a publication? Do I need to have this? No, just try, right? And there are people that apply that have a whole range of different backgrounds. Riss is about, and really hopefully transformation and support. There are tremendous researchers that are some of the best in the world in their field, but also some of the kindest people. And I think that's been my takeaway, is that just the depth of caring of the colleagues, and they've been amazing. Riss would not exist without that community, without their commitment. This past summer, we were a second virtual summer. And with that summer, we actually had over 100 people that were working together to shape that experience. So please try. And if you want to dive into research, think about your home university as well and continue there. So I really want to thank Salva and Monanito for sharing their experiences with us and encouraging us and really diving in and hosting this session and making this opportunity to have this conversation a possibility for you. So good luck to everyone. And I really look forward to continuing the conversation and seeing you on a future session. So thank you so much. And that's it.
Thank you. And definitely apply